In this video, I want to talk about common knowledge and the proprietary knowledge. We don't usually refer to it in that term, but that's what it is. It's knowledge that somebody owns versus knowledge that is owned by everybody. It's common. So the common knowledge versus the non-common knowledge or the proprietary knowledge. And the reason that we need to have this discussion is that you're looking at sources for your research paper, and you will be citing some sources for the essay that you're going to turn in, the paper. And sometimes you need to cite a source, and it's a matter of proprietary knowledge. It's a matter of doing it right in that way. And other times you'll get information from a source, but you don't need to actually cite the source as you use that information, because that source that you got the information from doesn't own it in the same way as the type of information that you need to cite from sources. So let's go ahead and get started. What counts as common knowledge? Common knowledge is information that you can find in various places online that is pretty much factual basis. All right, now this is a little tricky. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time trying to develop this definition. Definitions by themselves are almost always tricky, because there will always be some sort of exception running around every now and then. But for the most part, all right, if you were looking at simple empirical data or scientific knowledge that is being taught in textbooks, that is on the web in many places, that is just what we consider now to be part of our shared knowledge. How many how many protons does a helium atom have? 2. Okay, so that how fast does light travel? 186,000 miles a second. All right, you can find that information at a certain specific source. Just look it up somewhere. I'm sure you're going to get to some website, and that's one specific website, that says that information. But because that information is so widely spread, you can find 10 other websites that has that information. And because it's not, historically, it has never been sort of owned by anybody. All right, there was always one first discoverer or one first measurer, and maybe that name got attached to the piece of information just because of the history of the thing. But now we do not feel any need to say that this information is owned by this person. It has been shared by the world and has been accepted as one of the facts that we all have as a community. Okay, so that Abraham Lincoln is our 16th president is a specific detail. He could have been our 15th, or he could have been our 17th, right? So, there is some specificity there. You can't just guess at that. You can't just, that's an actual fact, correct? But again, it's a fact that it is shared across multiple sources. Many places it's going to relay this fact to you. And it is not, okay, now here's another important part. It is not the result of someone's analogy or logic or original thinking. Okay, this fact came about just because of the nature of existence. And now as far as Abraham Lincoln's being our 16th president, that I don't know if it ever mattered who first noticed this in print, right? The records just speak to that. But I wonder how many of you listening to this video knows, how many miles the Earth is in diameter. So, do you know this right now? Without looking it up, do you know this? And you might not know it. I don't. Actually, I don't. I just came up with something. I have no clue. I don't even want to make a guess, right? But the point is, the fact that you might not know it does not mean that it's not common knowledge. It just, we can't know everything. But if you just search for that the answer to that question, how many miles is the Earth in diameter, you are going to find it available to you in many, many sources. But I'm going to make it a little more complicated, because even if it were found in only just a few sources, it is still an historical fact that doesn't necessarily belong to anybody by virtue of original arrangement or original thinking. Right now, somebody's going to have to figure out how to measure this, right? And maybe the method of measuring was unique to this person, but once you got that fact out there, that is and it gains traction and activity as it crosses from one site to another, from one source to another. See, the speed of light, I hope you all knew that, 186,000 miles a second. If you didn't, it went from one source to you, and then you can share it with someone else. You've got all this network of sharing going on. And so if you're looking at some information that you have, right, and you realize, well, this is facts, this is specifics, and do I need to cite this? And I'm like, well, how long have we known this? How many sources share the information this way? Have we accepted it as not belonging specifically to anybody? Okay, even though as it came into existence, names and people were attached to it because they were the discoverers or the original measurers of this factual information, this this information that's just tied to the material world, and it just belongs to the material qualities of the world. Okay, now if it helps, you might want to think in terms of Lego pieces. Okay, because a Lego piece we could consider to be just a straight up, fact of nature, okay? And this fact of this world, this could include the population of Cleveland. What is the current population of Cleveland? I don't know, but, we can find that online in various places, and it's just a fact of this world, and it doesn't necessarily belong to anybody. Although when you go find it, you'll see that it's on a particular site, right? So that I would consider that to be sort of like a Lego piece. That number, whatever it is, the current population of Cleveland, Ohio, that's like a Lego piece. And you have this Lego piece. I wish I had some here so that you can actually see it, but you know what I'm talking. You can have 10 of them just sitting on the table, Lego pieces. Let's have 20. They don't belong to anybody necessarily in the sense of citing. Like you have to cite that and you have to cite this. However, if you bring those Lego pieces and you as a person, let's just say you're invited to this table, there are Lego pieces on the table. If you start picking and selecting certain Lego pieces and you start building something kind of unique, if you start building something, the arrangements of that information that might lead to a really nice build could be it could be all sorts of things, but it ends up being your original arrangement. At that point, that build belongs to you in the sense that was you had some original insight that went into that as to how what you did with that information. Okay, so sometimes when you're reading an essay or an article, and if it's facts based, you can look at the facts the person is using, but they are using those facts to reach a conclusion that they themselves developed. It's their original conclusion using the common facts. Okay, so at that point, if you want to cite their conclusion, their opinion on matters that are coming from the facts, that needs to be cited because that belongs to the mind of the person who put those Lego pieces together in an original way. Okay, so many times an article might use individual facts that they themselves are not necessarily citing because it's out there. It's very easy to find, and there is no one person or organization that is claiming or can claim that this is their specific property because they've created it. All right, that is not anything that these that the author of this essay is going to maybe cite. But at the end, they might be forming conclusions and opinions and analyses, theses, evaluations, conclusions that they came to by means of a path of reasoning that's pretty much unique to them, or at least they were the first ones to get it into print, into publication. So at that point, you need to cite those larger claims, okay, that result from someone working with the individual information, okay. So I hope you get the sense of how that larger claim might be someone saying, oh, wait a minute, I know that these Lego pieces are available to everyone, but I put them together in an original way, and here are some conclusions I've reached. Here are some main points that I came up with. And so that needs to be cited. It's also very much like an artist that says, hey, nobody owns the colors. Nobody owns red and blue and green and black and white. And, I can go out and make the pigment, or I can buy the paints, right? And you can buy paints too. I can buy black. You can buy black. But what I did with it, when I selected a few colors and then I applied them certain ways, and I let my mind and my spirit, get involved with what I was creating, and I created a painting that is unique to me. Now all of a sudden that common stuff that stays common in itself, when it gets put together originally by me, it results in something that I own. And if you're going to, use this somehow in your work, you need to cite me, as this information is coming from me, or this, not necessarily information, but this rendering, this analysis, this conclusion, this thesis, this composition, it's coming from me. So that's really one good way to start the process of understanding what's common knowledge and what is not common knowledge, what we call proprietary knowledge, because this type of knowledge has an owner. Common knowledge doesn't. Okay, now it gets a little trickier. I'm not going to take, hopefully this won't go too much longer, but I'm not necessarily talking about copyright right now, okay, or trademark or anything like that. I'm just saying what do you need to cite in your paper and what do you not need to cite. All right, so just some basic rules of thumb that will help you with this assignment. And as you get your feet wet with this and you get comfortable with this, you can start layering on top of it all the nuances and other complexities that go with citing. It's not as easy as it sounds, but for this assignment, let's not over mystify it. Let's try to keep it simple. If you can find that fact that you think you need to cite, if you can find it on various sites, okay, and if no one is no longer talking about who owns it or where did it come from, or because it's just part of our shared, the word is lore, the intellectual information we have, our shared knowledge, then you don't need to cite it, even if it's specific, even if it's how many feet tall is the Empire State Building. I don't know, find it. If you want to use it in your paper, use it. Do you need to cite it? No. Especially in today's very rich age of digital searching, right? If people can find it and all they need to do is speak to their phones and they got the information, you don't need to cite it, okay? For that sort of factual information, even if it's ultra specific, and you can ask 100 people and you'd be lucky if anyone knows it. See, common knowledge is not necessarily that which everyone has in their head right now. Common knowledge is what is out there available in public information that we consider nobody's specific property. So that's really a good way to look at it. So you realize now that when you're talking about ideas, when you're talking about somebody's original analysis, when they took this information and that information and this information that we all share, and they put it together in a unique original way, and they presented a conclusion, and you're going to use that, you need to cite the conclusion, because that was somebody's original, that came from someone's original thinking, right? And usually that sort of thing belongs to one person. Now that one person might be influential as a thought leader, and other people might be buying into this, but they really kind of believe it's this one, they believe it. They all kind of speak it in that group. But you can look at the history of the idea, and you can really see that although a lot of people understand it and maybe buy into it, there's only one person that originated it. And if that person is still living, or, well, really, if that kind of doesn't matter. If it's that case, you need to cite that information as belonging to that person. All right, so you cite that source. Okay. Now, another thing to keep in mind that kind of is a very simple thing here is I'm moving on now to how you actually put this information in your paper, because when you're putting facts, we usually just put them right into your paper. But when you're putting arrangements of words, okay, and you're using word for word for word for word from that source, you need to put quotation marks around it, and then you, at the beginning and the end, we call that open, double tick, the two, and then when you finish after the words and you put the ending, that's closing, double tick. So open, double tick, closing, double tick. You need double tick quotation marks enveloping them, and then you need that citation at the end, between parentheses, the author and the page number, or if there is no page number, then often just the author's name is fine. The author of the source that you got those words from. Okay, so that kind of simplifies matters. And there's more to talk about. There's more. There's things like, well, when do you quote? When do you paraphrase? The word paraphrase just means alongside wording. Okay, it means kind of another version of the words. So when you paraphrase something, you look at what someone said word for word, and then you just say the essence of the thing, what it means, using your own words. Okay, and sometimes that's easy to do, sometimes it's not so easy. But when you paraphrase, you don't need to use quotation marks, but sometimes you do have to cite it. However, again, just a very simple rule of thumb is anytime you start double ticking something, putting something between quotation marks, you always have to cite it. Okay. Now, just a word of admission. I think we all kind of sense this. For this college assignments, there are artificial requirements that I have to put into the assignment, because the department wants to know that you can actually do this. You can actually use quotation marks. You can actually use citations, that sort of thing. So, I am going to require you to have a certain number of quotations, and and then a certain number of citations. They're not always the same. Every quotation needs a citation, but sometimes you are using specific information that is unique to one person's mind, and you're not quoting it, but you're putting it in your own words. But okay, at that point you need to cite that as well. So, but yeah, anytime you do quotation marks, you need to cite that. That's going to keep you safe above board, in many situations. All right, so we have time for just one more kind of exception to all of this. All right. When a fact has just been discovered, okay, so we're going back to the Lego pieces now. When someone actually discovers a new Lego piece, I don't know what it is, but when it's a new Lego piece, right, and it comes out to the public to be shared by the public, now that's really what we mean when we say it's been published, okay? If you can find that information at only one source and nowhere else, it's best to cite that then, even though it's something that maybe is not some original analysis from someone, but this person or this team or this company, they really worked hard and they discovered something, and it is in the realm of nature or material. It's one of these facts that like 50 years from now might be shared everywhere, but right now it's being presented only through one venue, one essay or one article or one website or one YouTube video. If that's the case, you need to cite that, because it's very convenient for the researcher to know where that information is coming from. This is sort of citation for convenience sake. These people might want to try to own the information. Not going to be able to own it for long, but the point would be someone like me or another editor or another researcher or whatever that is reading your work, and you're like, wow, I've never heard this before. What? I didn't know that. And I want to check it. I want to check it because I want to make sure that you're right, or it's so kind of bizarre that I'm a little concerned about this. Okay. So at that point, if you realize as an author, as you're writing your essay, that would be a whole lot easier for me if you listed the source, because this source is kind of hard to find, and there's really only one source out there that's saying this, then at this point I would say cite it for convenience sake for the person that's going to check you. Okay, I'll throw a well, no, I was thinking of an example, but well, sure, I'll share this with you. Apparently, there's someone out there saying that 1 out of 5 American adults at one point in their life is going to have a mental illness. That if they walked into a psychiatrist, and that psychiatrist is using the latest edition of the Diagnostic and Statistic Manual of the American Psychological Association, the DSM, I think it's 6 or 7 now, whatever, that if you were honest with them and told you your symptoms, they could find a malady, a category for you, a label for you. And at that point, that would be mental, a mental issue, mental illness. 1 out of 5. 1 out of 5. Okay. Hey, this is a class of, 20. Okay. 4 of us. Do you believe me? Do you believe me? This is kind of, come on, right? Well, seriously, how do you know? And how are you defining mental illness? I try to give you one, but what was the quote using? How does the quote know this? How? Okay, so you'd be like, now you might go looking for it, and you might find it in some sources, but if you look closely, you realize that they're just copying it from someone. And you're like, well, where's the original? Because I want to know how the original came about. Okay, so at that point, it would be very convenient for you if you knew the name of the book and the author that did this. Okay, so the book is called The Sociopath Next Door, and the lady's name is, I can't believe I'm doing this because I can't remember it very well, and this is going to get recorded. I think it's Mary Stout, but you're going to have to check me on that, but it's The Sociopath Next Door, okay? And, if you just go Google the title of the book and read it, you probably see this dumb quote. And, I would actually love somebody to write a research paper challenging Stout's methodology. Like, really, honestly, how do you know? And to what extent are you setting your parameters so widely that you have a shocking statistic that actually doesn't mean anything, when you think about it? Because maybe the Diagnostic and Statistic Manual is a little over the top with all its symptoms, and maybe it's too loose. Do you know? You get a checklist of 20 things. If you meet at least 10, you can be diagnosed. It's about half of the things they give you as a checklist for the illnesses. And how many people just live life with these things, and it's normal. We don't need a label. This is our life. We're functioning, and we understand it, and we get through it, and we do a little bit of self-medicating. But you know what I'm saying. And are we really going to call these people mentally ill? At that point, the definition loses its strength. Right. I think this is a great paper for someone to write on. But anyway, that's when I would cite something, right? Because 1 out of 5 mental health, all this seems to be just a fact of nature if it's true. But it's not coming from it. This actually, you can trace it to one person saying something, and if this person didn't say it right, then we got an issue with this. So I would cite that source. So there are exceptions. I'm not going to be looking at your paper with a magnifying glass to catch everything. I want you to just know that you got to practice this, and you got to start developing a sort of a very good definitional sense, but also an intuitional sense of what needs to be cited and what doesn't need to be cited. All right. Hey, thanks for listening.